Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. The UFC announced Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Kevin Holland, the main event of a fight night on December 3rd in Florida. And I wanted to make a video giving my reaction as well as my early prediction to this fight. And this video is more than, just an early prediction, because honestly, there is a lot to unpack with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Kevin Holland being announced. There's the talk about MMA retirements, and was Kevin Holland ever actually retired? There's the talk of, did Kevin Holland successfully strong-arm the UFC into giving him a stylistically winnable matchup? There's talk about MMA retirements in general. And then also there's talk about the rankings. I want to talk about the rankings in this video. And also, I'm going to get to this later in the video, but my initial reaction to this fight booking was cut them both. I want to see the UFC cut Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and I want to see the UFC cut Kevin Holland as well. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's start off talking about Kevin Holland's retirement. So Kevin Holland put out maybe a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, I don't remember exactly when, that he was retired from MMA. And I talked about it on a stream. I think I streamed the day that he announced it. And he recently came out and said, yeah, I'm retired. And, I got paid and, whatever. He made a bunch of money and this and that. Everyone that asked me about it, I said, this is 100% just a publicity stunt. He wants attention. He's not retired. And it wouldn't shock me that if he had a fight announced soon. And a lot of people were under the impression, Kevin Holland did not say this, but a lot of people were under the impression that Holland got absolutely mauled by Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 279, and he realized he could not compete with the top of the elite in the welterweight division, and therefore he retired because he went out there and everything he thought he knew. He'd been training for months, and he goes out there against Khamzat Chimaev, gets destroyed, doesn't have any answer for anything in that fight, gets finished rather quickly, and basically his whole world was shook upside down. His confidence was gone, and now he's retired. And the reason I didn't believe that is because even though Kevin Holland got finished rather quickly against Khamzat Chimaev, I believed that after that loss to Khamzat Chimaev, Kevin Holland was in the best position that he's ever been his entire UFC career. And let me explain that to you. Frankie Edgar years ago took a fight on short notice against Brian Ortega and got TKO'd or KO'd, actually, I think it was. And literally like a fight or two later, he was fighting against Max Holloway for the featherweight title. And some of you guys are probably wondering, what does that have anything to do with Kevin Holland versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson? Well, that goes to show you, and we've seen, there's other examples of this, but that was the first one that came to mind. We've seen that if you do the UFC favors, they will reciprocate favors to you as well. And Kevin Holland, people forget this, he took the fight against Daniel Rodriguez on 2 weeks' notice. Now, he wanted to fight, in September, so there was already talk of him fighting, but he took the fight against Daniel Rodriguez on 2 weeks' notice. Then you have the fact, 24 hours beforehand, when the entire card was shook upside down, Kevin Holland gets offered Khamzat Chimaev, literally the worst possible matchup for him. And what does Kevin Holland do? He takes the fight. He takes the stylistic worst possible matchup for him and essentially helps save the card. I know had he not take that fight, Khamzat would have probably been pulled from the card. The card was already lackluster to begin with. So Kevin Holland did two massive favors for the UFC at UFC 279. On top of that, according to Dana White, he is good friends with Kevin Holland as well. So the UFC was going to give him the biggest fight with the most stylistically friendly matchup for Kevin Holland in his next fight because of this. Frankie Edgar took the short notice fight against Brian Ortega. He gets slept. I think he won one fight after that, and then they gave him a title fight against Max Holloway because he had did them a favor, and he had did them plenty of favors in the past as well. And it just goes to show the UFC, as vindictive as they can be, people who do what they want them to do, which isn't really fair, now all of a sudden they won't think twice about throwing a fighter a bone. So that's the point of that whole story. And why would Kevin Holland retire when essentially now he's looking at the biggest possible fight he can get with the most stylistically friendly matchup for his style, conducive to him getting a win. So there's no way he was going to retire. And I've seen people speculating that Kevin Holland strong-armed the UFC. He's forced the UFC's hand. He was going to retire, and the UFC said, please, Kevin Holland, don't retire. We'll give you Wonderboy Thompson. He's a top 10 ranked fighter, and, he's big. He's a decent name. It's not a big name, but he's a decent name. And he's getting older, and he's on the downslope. And stylistically, it's a winnable matchup for you. It's not guaranteed you're going to win, but you're far more likely to beat Wonderboy Thompson than some of these other guys, even, further down the rankings like Shavkat Rakhmonov will give you Wonderboy. That's not what happened at all. The UFC was reciprocating the favors that Kevin Holland did for them. The UFC could give two shits less if Kevin Holland retired. That's just the facts of MMA. It's always next man up. People have been asking, and Dana White says this all the time, and you guys know I'll never miss a moment to throw out some Dana White slander, but he says this and it's always true. And I've been watching for 12 years now. Every time he said this, it's always been true. People always ask, what are you going to do when GSP retires? What are you going to do with when Anderson Silva retires? What are you going to do when Conor McGregor retires? What are you going to do? It's always next man up. They will continue to put on fights. The show will go on. They will figure it out. They will build new stars. Kevin Holland isn't even remotely a star. Is he kind of popular? Yeah, but he's not some massive star. The UFC didn't care if he retired. Outside of, okay, maybe Dana's friends with him, so he doesn't want to see him retire just yet. Kevin Holland has done them favors in the past. You took the Marvin Vettori fight on short notice after getting mauled by Derek Brunson like 2 weeks, 3 weeks prior. So Kevin Holland has shown he wants to be active. He has shown he's willing to step in on any fight and do the UFC favors when needed. Those are the fighters, regardless of their win-loss record and their performances, that the UFC wants to keep around, okay? That's why this fight was getting put together. Kevin Holland never retired. He was just using that as some publicity stunt. He was joking around. This fight has probably been in the works. They might have even talked about it before he fought Hamzat at UFC 279. That's how much I believe that Kevin Holland was not retired. He was just using this. He probably, one of his friends probably said to him, you should retire on social media. And then when your fight with Wonderboy gets announced, it'll be hilarious. And, I want to briefly talk about MMA retirements in general. I am so sick of these fake retirements for attention. I get the ones, and they don't annoy me as much, of the legends who retire and then, okay, they decide a year or two later they're coming back. I'm so tired of these retirements where they're, thanks for the cheddar, I'm out. I mean, how many times has Conor McGregor retired at this point in time? I can't even count. It's definitely probably more than 10. And every time, all the media outlets pick it up because they have nothing better to do. These fake-ass retirements, I'm so tired of them. They're very annoying. As far as an early prediction for this fight, I'm iffy because my initial thoughts were it's going to be a striking fight. The Wonderboy Thompson is the more technical striker. So I'm going to pick Wonderboy Thompson. Wonderboy Thompson's not much of a finisher, so I'm going to pick Wonderboy Thompson by decision. But then I really started to think about it, and Wonderboy Thompson is getting up there in age. He's on a downslope. He's lost his last 2 fights. He's lost 4 out of his last 6. And it's like he's 39 years old. Meanwhile, you got Kevin Holland. Even though he got dominated in his last fight, he's 29 years old. He's 10 years younger. MMA is a sport where the young eat the old. Kevin Holland has a reach advantage. Kevin Holland has a power advantage. So I kind of flip, over to Kevin Holland. But this is really a tough fight to pick. For my early prediction, I'm going to go with Wonderboy. I think Wonderboy still has enough left. I think he's far superior from what we've seen in the past as far as his technical striking. But it would not shock me if Wonderboy has just gone further off the cliff. He's slower. He's a little bit chinny. He got KO'd by Anthony Pettis. He got rocked by Tyron Woodley multiple times in their fights. His last 2 fights, he just got out grappled. So I'm wondering, the Jeff Neal fight wasn't that long ago. It was December of 2020. Put on a showcase against Jeff Neal. Look how good Jeff Neal just recently looked against Vicente Luque. So I think there's a chance that Wonderboy Thompson is still very good, but it's that wrestling stylistic matchup that has just given him nightmare issues, and that's why he hasn't looked good in his last 2 fights. So I'm leaning Wonderboy. When we get closer, I'll do a full breakdown and prediction. As far as my initial reaction, I talked about it earlier, and I said I want both these guys cut because we're going to talk about the rankings here in a second. You look at the UFC rankings, we have Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who's ranked number 7 in the division, okay? And you look at Kevin Holland, where's he ranked in the welterweight division? He's not ranked. He's nowhere to be found. And one thing I am so sick of with the UFC rankings, and I hate the rankings to begin with. I use them as reference all the time. But the rankings cause more problems than they're worth. All the rankings are good for is to explain to someone who doesn't follow the sport as closely, to explain to a novice MMA fan, basically who's good and who's not. The panel that votes on these rankings are essentially, we don't even know. They're mysterious people. We don't even know. They basically are a villain from a Scooby-Doo episode. We literally have no idea who these people are. You can look it up on the UFC's website. I literally don't know who these people are. So these rankings are essentially just horseshit. But Kevin Holland's not ranked. Stephen Wonderboy's number 7. And then we have the fact that every fighter uses the number next to their name not to fight people behind them typically, okay? Every time you see someone who's ranked number 3, oh, I'm not fighting the number 7 guy. I only want to fight forward. Meanwhile, when they were ranked number 10, they're saying, oh, well, I don't want to fight. I want to fight ahead. I don't want to fight anyone behind me. So they're doing the same thing, and then they're complaining when everyone else does it. It's the most annoying thing ever. Welterweight has been the worst division over the past 3 years of fighters not fighting guys who were ranked behind them. And now you have this weird scenario where Wonderboy Thompson is happily taking a fight with an unranked welterweight. And this is where I get to why I think Wonderboy should be cut. Wonderboy is holding hostage his number 7 ranking. He may lose to Kevin Holland. There's a chance he could lose, okay? And I get it. Okay, well, then he's not holding it hostage. We need guys, if you're not moving towards a title, if you're not moving towards a number 1 contender fight, if you're not moving towards contention of any shape or form, the next best thing for you, and I get it, this isn't fair, but this is the way MMA works, is to test some of the up-and-coming talent, okay? Does that suck for you? Yes. But if you go out there, you can, there's guys that have done it where, look at Jim Miller, where the UFC has put him against younger guys and Jim Miller has sent them back. Jim Miller has defeated them. When you're a legend like Wonderboy Thompson, you're still very good and you're not fighting guys ahead of you now because you have no upside to fight for a title. You have no chance of fighting towards title contention most likely ever again. We need you to test some of these up-and-coming savages. And there was talk of a Sean Brady fight before. Sean Brady's ranked number 8. That's not happening. And then most recently, there was a talk of a Shavkat Rakhmonov fight. And Wonderboy Thompson did an interview, and he said, I'm not fighting Shavkat. I don't want a wrestler. First off, Shavkat Rakhmonov is not a wrestler. Does he have very good wrestling? Yes. But Shavkat Rakhmonov is a very well-rounded fighter. So at this point, if you're a top 10 fighter, and you're essentially saying, I only want matchups that I can win, I don't think you should be welcome in the UFC anymore. And I get it, or they should take him out of the rankings. If he was out of the rankings, okay, that's great, that's fine. He's number 7 ranked fighter, and he's basically saying, I can't fight anybody in the division because, in the top 15 of the division, because I'm going to lose. Because, he gets ragdolled by Colby. He gets ragdolled by Hamzat, which he talked about Hamzat in the past, and he didn't want to fight him either. He gets ragdolled by Gilbert. He already lost. He got ragdolled by Bilal. Already lost. He beat Jeff Neal, who's 1 spot ahead of him, which really makes no sense since their fight wasn't that long ago. He already beat Vicente Luque. Shavkat Rakhmonov made the perfect sense because Shavkat's not even a wrestler. I get it. Maybe he uses it in the fight, but Shavkat is a well-rounded fighter, and we need somebody to test him to see if he is legit. And I get you don't want to be the gatekeeper for the top 10, but if you're going to sit at number 7 and you're going to pick and choose stylistically winnable matchups, we don't need you in the rankings anymore. And matter of fact, go off to PFL. We don't need you at all anymore because at this point, who does Wonderboy Thompson beat who's a grappler? He's not beating Sean Brady. He's not beating Shavkat, who's not even an actual wrestler, but I think Shavkat beats him everywhere. I think he beats him in the grappling. I think he beats him in the striking. I think he beats him in the clinch. I wouldn't be shocked if he loses to Michael Chiesa. I wouldn't be shocked if he lost to Neil Magny. So I don't think he should be able to sit at number 7, hold that hostage. Meanwhile, guys like Shavkat are ranked behind him. Because if Wonderboy goes out there and beats Kevin Holland, is he going to hang on to that number 7 spot? They better drop him way back to like number 11 because he doesn't belong there. He's not willing to fight anybody ranked in the top 15. He doesn't want anyone. He's only asking for stylistically friendly matchups. As far as my thoughts on cutting Kevin Holland, and some of you guys are probably like, what's going on? Here's my thoughts behind cutting Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland is a very fun fighter to watch. Don't get me wrong. You start looking at the welterweight division, and it's very similar to my assessment of Wonderboy Thompson. Kevin Holland's not beating Leon Edwards, okay? He's going to get out-grappled, maybe even outstruck. He's not beating Kamaru Usman. And I get it, Kamaru Usman, who knows how much longer he's going to be around. He's not beating Kamaru Usman, though. He's not beating Colby Covington. He's not beating Khamzat Chimaev. He's not beating Gilbert Burns. He's not beating Bilal Muhammad. Okay, maybe he could beat Jeff Neal. Maybe he can beat Wonderboy, who's number 6 and number 7. He's not beating Sean Brady. He's not beating Shavkat. He's not beating Chiesa, most likely. He could probably beat Chiesa, maybe. And I doubt he's beating Neil Magny either, but that's one of those iffy 50-50 fights. So my thought behind Kevin Holland is he's a perfect fighter for someone like PFL or Bellator because he's got a decent personality. He's still young. And for me, cutting Kevin Holland from the UFC is more of a help for Kevin Holland than anything. Because for me, this fight is meaningless. Kevin Holland is never going to move towards the top of the division. And now if he beats Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, are the people who make the rankings just going to swap him out and put Kevin Holland at number 7? He has no chance of beating any of these guys in the top 5. It's just not happening. Unless he vastly improves his wrestling skills, which he's been working on for the last 3 years. And, okay, have they gotten a little bit better? Did he show some decent scrambles against Khamzat? I guess. I'd rather see Kevin Holland be cut, go over to PFL. There he can win the $1 million prize every year. That's my thought process because he's not going to be able to beat a lot of these top 10 ranked welterweights in the division. The grappling of Kevin Holland is just, it's just not good enough to compete with these guys. So as far as this fight being a main event, and that's another reason I'm kind of down on it, and this is more the UFC's fault, this should not be a main event of a fight night. I mean, both these guys, it's meaningless. I'd rather 2 up-and-coming contenders fight each other. I'd rather a Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Jeff Neal fight, 2 guys who are trying to make their way towards title contention. They're on the cusp of title contention. I think that makes a lot more sense. I just don't think this fight belongs as a main event of a fight night card. I'd rather see something closer to what we saw with Sarukian and Gamrot. Something along those lines in any division where you have 2 guys who are very good, they're up and coming, fighting each other in the main event. In this main event, do we have a fan-friendly matchup? Yes, we do. But neither one of these guys is ever going anywhere as far as title contention in the division. And, it's just not a great main event of a fight night card. And, this is a decent fight night card. They have some decent fights on it. But I don't think this is main event worthy. Let me know what you guys think of all this down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.